Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again for another new segment called Bauer Reacts, where I take a look at something going on that interests me, and then I react to it. And I found a news article that I was really excited to check out. We're going to check it out together on Stonemaier Games blog. And Jamie makes some absolutely fantastic blog entries that you need to check out if you've not checked them out, especially if you're planning on ever launching a Kickstarter. And even not, they're just fascinating as well. Check out the link down below. But this is an insider's perspective on Gamefound versus Kickstarter. And this is from the creator of Lands of Galzir, which was a campaign I covered on a Gamefound critique, so we will get to my thoughts on that a little bit later, because I think that's important, because let's say that they come out and they're like, oh, we thought Gamefound sucked, but then I go back to the thing, it was like I gave them like a D- because they weren't doing this or that, and I didn't think they ran a great campaign, so I think it's relevant, but let's get into the post first. So this is from May 19th, 2022. Ever since Gamefound expanded to include full-fledged crowdfunding campaigns, I've been impressed as a backer with how quickly they managed to compete with Kickstarter. Gamefound has been very open and responsive to my questions. See articles linked below. Oh my gosh, yeah, trust me, I imagine they would love to land Stonemaier Games. Gamefound would be salivating at that. However, I haven't heard a detailed report from a creator who has used Gamefound. Earlier this week, I had a nice email exchange with Sammy Loxo, probably best known for Dale of Merchants. He ran a Gamefound campaign in October 2021 for Lands of Galzir, an open-world game that I backed, and after a brief discussion about Gamefound's Pledge Manager system, I asked Sammy if he could answer some more detailed questions about his experience with Gamefound and Kickstarter. Sammy kindly agreed, and his answers are below. I am excited! As someone who spends a lot of time on both Gamefound and Kickstarter, I love seeing this kind of behind-the-scenes stuff. Greetings. It's my honor and pleasure to share my experience using Gamefound with you, both from a backer and a creator's view. Thanks, Jamie, for inviting me for the questions. For those unfamiliar with Gamefound, it's a crowdfunding platform similar to Kickstarter, with the differentiation being that it can only be used to host board game-related projects. For years, it was known as a Pledge Manager platform. Only recently have they added a possibility to host crowdfunding campaigns as well. Now, on to the questions. Why did you choose to use Gamefound instead of Kickstarter for Lands of Galzir? One of my biggest reasons for using Gamefounds is the fact that Finnish people and companies still can't host projects on Kickstarter without the help of a third party. Very common practice there. That's why you'll see a lot of companies where it's very obvious that they're not from the United States. Say it's like, oh, they're from Delaware. And that's how they get around. It's not a nefarious thing by any stretch of the imagination. I do want to specify that. Gamefound supports a larger number of countries, making it easier and safer for someone like myself to run a crowdfunding campaign. Keyword being safer there. Because while it's not nefarious, if you see that, there is the possibility that someone could say, oh, you know what, I'm going to hold this hostage because you made $2 million and I actually want a bigger chunk of that. And since I have a lot of power here, it could be bad. So I like the safer pointing out that. Gamefound supports has also been highly responsive to my communication, which is in quite stark contrast to Kickstarter, which has grown so large it's hard to get a hold of anyone in a reasonable time. Now, as someone who has ran, I believe, 5-6 Kickstarter projects, this is spot on, and I ran mine years ago. I can't imagine things have gotten better. What were a few of your favorite elements on Gamefound after running a campaign there? Two of the biggest are the integrated pledge manager and the more robust project page. Anyone who has ran or took part in a board game crowdfunding campaign has probably seen the needs and pros of using a pledge manager. Personally, I can't see myself running a project without using one. Having everything under a single site makes that process that much more streamlined by keeping everyone on the same site for the campaign, late pledges, updates, pledge manager, and more. As for the campaign page, it's nice to be able to navigate it from a sub-menu instead of what sometimes feels like infinite scrolling. Yes, agreed. Being able to click on those tabs to go straight to shipping or straight to here or straight to there, so useful. The rewards and add-ons are also showcased better in my opinion. Building and editing the page is easier with the editor. For example, being able to include video files instead of GIFs. This editor does come with its own usability problems, but hopefully those get ironed out as time passes. Completely agree. This is why you're allowed to just use, and what's like being able to use a YouTube video as your Kickstarter video, like that, or as your Gamefound video. Like little things like this, I love. Now, I will say the rewards and showcases are showcased better. They can be. I feel like it can be incredibly clunky on Gamefound as people are still trying to, use Kickstarter strategies, but on Gamefound. And sometimes Gamefound projects just feel super clunky, and it kind of ruins some of the fun of going through the stretch goals or going through the pledges because you're just going. So I think it really depends on how well you run it. But yes, it does have a ton of potential. I would agree. Why did you miss about Kickstarter after running a campaign on Gamefound? Great question. After using the platform over a half a year, there's actually not much I missed from Kickstarter. The biggest must be the lack of notifications for new comments. Yeah, that seems pretty important. Therefore, some can fly under the radar for a while until I realize a new one has popped up. Another is obviously the sheer size of Kickstarter and its audience. While a creator is responsible for the initial success of their project, the ecosystem it has hosted can boost that success based on its popularity. This is what I shout from the rooftops all the time. Being at the top of the popularity chart is super important because that's how they, there's both the popularity chart and there's also Magic, which is heavily skewed by the popularity chart, I would imagine, because duh. If this is a popular project among people like you, they're going to want to show you that because then you're going to give them money. There's no denying that Kickstarter is a few orders of magnitude larger compared to Gamefound, which obviously does lead to having to fight for more visibility. Which platform did you find easier to set up and edit the pre-launch project page, and why? I imagine it had to be Gamefound. Gamefound has so many amazingly fantastic features that you can use as just before your Kickstarter or before your project launches to set up buzz and stuff. They do polls. Oh, I love it. I touched this a bit earlier. My vote goes for Gamefound. Their editor divides the page both for the backers as well as the creator. That makes it more manageable to browse and edit large project pages. Gamefound also lets the creator populate the FAQ ahead of time. Yeah, that makes no sense. Kickstarter does not. See also this video from Heath Robinson about landing and pre-launch pages on Gamefound. Which platform's pre-launch system did you prefer and why? Another vote to Gamefound for me. While Kickstarter doesn't support much outside of a simple image and a follow button, Gamefound lets creators build as large or small pre-launch pages as they wish. This is separate to the actual project page, so creators can show their selected content to everyone before the launch and keep working on the actual page behind the scenes. Great stuff. Kickstarter's big advantage, in my opinion, are notifications that people get when they follow other creators or backers. Do you think the lack of that mechanism negatively impacts Gamefound's campaigns? That's huge as well. And that's one thing. I feel like Gamefound does not do nearly as good of a job as it should spotlighting publishers. I've said this all the while. It seems so weird to me when you go to the front page of Gamefound, you do not see the publishers' names underneath that. This is just Raw. This is just Resist. Who made it? I feel like that, because especially with companies that have a lot of brand loyalty, I think that's just, I think you want that up there. It's a neat feature, definitely. Do you think the lack of that mechanism negatively impacts? It is a neat feature, definitely. As a crowdfunding platform grows larger, it's more and more important to have ways for people to find projects interesting to them. Yeah, and I get that all the time. I'll get emails that say, this person backed this project, and I like how it shows underneath that. Like, 3 of my friends have backed this project. That's cool. Why visibility isn't yet a big problem on Gamefound, I would argue a couple weeks ago, there were a couple games that probably would disagree very strongly. Because Gamefound does a piss-poor job of, I feel like, spotlighting anything past the top 6. And then the top 6, in many instances, is filled with things that aren't even out yet. So I don't know. But hey, everybody disagree? Everybody got opinion? While visibility isn't yet a big problem on Gamefound, simply due to the limited number of campaigns, it can become much worse if it grows in popularity. At that time, I hope for them to implement something similar to Kickstarter. Yes, I've been saying that. Right now, there's no real need to create buzz on your Kickstarter or your Gamefound campaign, like running contests and stuff like that, or doing polling. I mean, it's great to do it because you keep people active and engaged, but I think having the actual popularity chart aspect on Kickstarter is something that forces Kickstarter creators to try and do better if they want to compete. And that, in turn, makes crowdfunding better. So I definitely would love to see them get on there, especially as they get more projects on their pages. Have you required a personal level of customer service for projects on either platform? If so, how would you compare the two? As Kickstarter is a much older, more mature platform, information on its usage was easier to find without contacting support. Yeah, people have been using Kickstarter for over a decade. The few times maybe it's not for over a decade. Yeah, I think it is. The few times I've contacted them, it's a toss-up if or when I will hear back from them. I've had much more problems using Gamefound, partially because it's a new platform with some growing pain, but also because it has much more features, making it more complex to understand. When I have had questions, my contact on Gamefound has usually been highly responsive. They have also claimed to take my constructive feedback of some missing or misbehaving features to heart. It remains to be seen if and how they will take those into account in the future updates. Cool. Gamefound has a built-in pledge manager. Does that instantly make it better than Kickstarter's basic survey? What are some of the pros and cons you have found by using Gamefound's pledge manager? I'm going to say he's going to say yes. I would say that to be one of the biggest wins for them, having a robust shopping cart feature during the campaign and being able to turn that into late pledges and pledge manager is a huge bonus. Yeah. I mean, it makes so much sense. The implementation, especially the pledge manager, could still use a lot of improvement, however. That's actually the origin of Jamie contacting me in the first place. When I informed everyone who hasn't completed their Lands of Galzir pledges, Jamie got confused. He was sure he had done so. He did, as did many others, without going into details. It's easy to think one has completed their pledge when they in fact have not, and it's not as simple to complete as I'd hope. From a backer perspective, I agree with Sammy that pledge completion status needs some work on Gamefound. And I do like how he typed it, so this is how you know it's Jamie, because he did the thing right here. He's such a wizard on the typing. When he told me that I hadn't completed the pledge manager, there was every indication on Gamefound that my side of the transaction was complete until this is improved. I'd recommend that backers go to their project page itself when in doubt and look at the right sidebar. That's where I was able to find, with Sammy's help, that I had actually finalized my pledge and paid for shipping. hadn't done that. That's not good. Which platform will you use for your next crowdfunding project? Ooh, feet to the fire. Well, I haven't set that decision in stone yet. I'll most likely use Gamefound again in the future. The simple fact that I don't need to mess with a third party to launch a project, combined with the included pledge manager and response support, makes the decision rather easy. My hat goes on to Kickstarter for, well, kickstarting the whole crowdfunding era. It's truly amazing how it's made it possible for small creators like myself to seek funding directly from individuals, bypassing many traditional gatekeepers. And that sentence right there is why I will always love Kickstarter. And I was one of them. I have a 500 print run game that would never exist if it wasn't for Kickstarter. So I love crowdfunding, and I love Kickstarter. While crowdfunding is definitely time-consuming and not for everyone, the existence of it is inspiring. Anyone interested in my upcoming project can join the friendly Discord or join my email. For your platform of choice, is there anything you haven't mentioned that you would like to evolve and improve? I'll misbehave a little and share my hopes for both platforms. For Kickstarter, I simply hope for them to open their doors to more creators from smaller countries. Yes, makes sense. For Gamefound, I look forward to comment notifications and a more streamlined pledge manager. Okay. Lastly, I want to end by saying that the mere existence of more than one competing platform is good for everyone, both creators and backers alike. Agreed. If you have any questions, I'll try to pop in from time to time and get them there. So, let's go back to this project and see how they did. So they had 5,300 backers. That's fantastic. And let's see what I said about them, just out of curiosity.
They're all up in there. Awesome. Excellent. And other collaborators. Spectacular. This looks like some great customer service here. Bingo, bango, bongo. Love it. I think I'm leaning towards an A here on this one.
Now, if you are not familiar with my Kickstarter critique segment, A's are very, very few and far between. I would say probably one out of maybe 20-ish products get an A. So that means that this was an absolute banger in my mind of a campaign.
Do I want it? Yes, the video. That was very, very well done. Mixed the theme of the game along with the components very, very well. Can you do it? Yes. It took me a while to get to figuring that out and feeling comfortable. You know, I would.
Okay. So I honestly would love. So it sounds like Jamie got, and this was. So here's what my thoughts on this. My reaction. Nothing here shocks me, because I've heard other people in the hobby say things similar to this, and I still think Gamefound has some issues, and I like the fact that they spotlighted that. And he said, you know, as long as there's not a lot of campaigns going, I think things will go well. But as Gamefound continues to grow, that's not going to be how it is. You know, if more companies say, you know what, I'm finally making the switch, I'm going to Gamefound, I'm willing to go jump through all the hoops to figure out, you know, how we can make our projects as best as we can, they're going to need to figure out a way to solve that issue. And I've mentioned that, they mentioned that, so that is something that concerns me. And if they can do that, I think they really can be a viable alternative to Kickstarter, especially if they can continue to pull companies from Kickstarter. My personal prediction, I don't think they will. I think Kickstarter in a decade will still be bigger than Gamefound. I think that Kickstarter will still be just the primary one. And the reason why I say that is because Kickstarter's fan base is just so insanely massive. And the bottom line is, for most people, when they have a bad experience with Kickstarter, I think from just most backers, they don't blame Kickstarter. They blame the companies. So Kickstarter, in a way, gets off a little bit scot-free. Now, Kickstarter has their name in the mud all the time, but I feel like, and I hate to say this, they're almost too big to fail. And I also feel I see them still rapidly growing, and I see this every day pretty much, because when I check on Kickstarter campaigns, I always love to go and check out, where people back from, because I love the fact that Kickstarter shows me the country breakdown and the city breakdown if you want to see that, and they also show you how many new backers they have versus returning backers, and there's still projects that I see routinely that are getting 200, 300, 400, 500 new people coming to Kickstarter after a decade of being around, and I have a hard time seeing Gamefound usurp them. I hope they continue to grow, though. I really do. And overall, I thought this was a really fascinating article from Jamie Stegmaier's blog, which you need to check out, the Stonemaier Games blog, and play some of their amazing games. Scythe and Viticulture. Just Viticulture, my personal favorite, though. But let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on the insider's perspective on Gamefound versus Kickstarter? Which one do you prefer as a shopper? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoy this content, please let me know in the comments down below. I tried something a little bit different here, reacting to something around the hobby, and I kind of like it. So let me know what you think. Bye-bye. I should say bye-bye as I click this.